Welcome to this week's edition of Training Tuesday. Today we're going to be really focusing on the ad hoc reporting that we talked about last week. And so we're going to do a bit of a deep dive into the reporting. That business intelligence tool is really, there is a lot to it. So we're going to do a little bit more of a high level view and really focus in on what, overall what the tool looks like, and I'll show you how to run a report. We do have our monthly bid buy training, which will be actually next Wednesday, so a week from tomorrow, September 16th. We always try to have it a Wednesday that's right in the middle of the month, so it's not specifically the second or third Wednesday, but right in the middle of the month there. So for general planning, I know we get these questions sometimes of, we don't know exactly which day it's going to be until, maybe the beginning of each month. But just so you know, you can kind of plan on it normally being the second or third Wednesday. Job updates, there was just a note that was added to the IFB Job Aid, that I will be posting right after this meeting, and then we'll get into the ad hoc reporting. So the monthly bid buy training, like I said, will be next Wednesday, September 16th, starting at 9:30. So this is going to be slightly the schedule. If you've been a part of any of the other trainings in the past 6 months, we're changing up the structure just a touch, just in terms of the times, because what I found is we were starting at 9 a.m. and then I kind of felt like we were getting rushed a little bit to get through everything, and then we were done a little bit earlier. But in the way that many people's lunch hours work, I was pushing up right up against that noon time. So what I wanted to do was now have 2 sessions in the morning, 2 sessions in the afternoon. So it gives us a little bit more breathing time. There'll be a little bit more of a break in between each session. So 9:30, we're going to do a broad introduction, overview, general navigation of the system. Take a little bit of break. 10:45, we'll do a small purchase under $10,000. Then break for lunch, and then that small purchase, $10,000 and over, is the session that got moved into the afternoon. So we'll do that at 1, and then release off master at 2:30. So this link, which is in the slides, that you can always find in our training center, they'll be posted shortly after this meeting. There's the link there. Feel free to join us. Also, the call-in information is there as well. Okay, so let me go back. No, that way. Okay, so the IFB Job Aid, which I'm going to add post right after this meeting, all we did was we just added a note into the bulletin description that you guys can just copy and paste. And so what was happening on the previous Job Aid is that we didn't make it super clear on the front end in the bulletin description, for instance, that only small business set-aside vendors can be awarded, as well as in the bidders tab, we had instructed just to add the small business set-aside vendors. And we realized that actually it needs to be posted publicly to everyone, not just notify, or it already was posted publicly to everyone for everyone to see. It's just that those vendors with that NIGP code weren't specifically notified unless they were a small business vendor. So what this will allow is this new little process is it makes it a little bit easier for you on the front end, because you're just adding all vendors. You're not looking up and trying to click yes on the small business set aside vendor selection when you're adding your bidders. So it's just the same. It's always going to be unrestricted, because that's the way it always was. But we weren't going to make that. We want to notify all of them, because for instance, you may have a vendor that technically qualifies to be in the small business set aside program, and then they are not notified of this opportunity, and they could have gotten into the small business set aside program and submitted as a part of this IFB or RFP. So our RFP Job Aid will be updated in a similar fashion as well, and this is just for those NIGP codes that are set aside for small businesses. So if you're doing a normal IFB that isn't one of those 600 some codes, you're not going to be putting in this note, of course. So this will just be if it is a set aside code. So the note is if the IFB is utilizing an NIGP code set aside for small business set aside program vendors, include, so you'll just copy and paste this procurement is set aside for small business set aside program vendors only. Only SBSP vendors can be awarded. For more information, and then here's a link to that, to the small business set aside program page. So once again, this is really all about being upfront because we want to make sure that vendors see that in the bulletin description. If they are not a small business, they're not going to be able to be awarded. So this is similar to, for those of you that were with us with the IPB, the Illinois Procurement Bulletin would have a similar field where it is set aside. Vendors are not going to be able to submit unless they will not be able to be awarded unless they are in the program. So do we have any questions about that? It's pretty straightforward, but really all it comes down to is just promoting more competition and as well as being transparent in the bulletin description so that vendors can see that. Okay. All right, so let's dig into the ad hoc reporting feature. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm actually just going to go out and get into the system and show you how we create some reports. Okay, let me sign in. So this is our home page. Looks familiar. Up in the upper right-hand corner where we have the settings, you have the little gear there, and in your drop-down, you're going to select ad hoc reporting. So once I hit ad hoc reporting, it brings up a new page. Let me go ahead and see if I can make that any bigger. Okay, so here, where we're selecting our data, this is, we talk about this in the training a lot, but as you guys know, there are some, fields and there are some in the system that we don't use. So there are some of these here that you are selecting which domain you're going to be doing the report in. Now, I will say this. I go directly to purchase order domain because that has most of, all the information. So this is like if you're running a report on what had, procurements that reached PO, this is what you're going to want to use. Now, you do have the option to go and look at these other domains, quote domains, receipts, which we don't use, requisition domain. If you're just running a report just off requisitions, you can really go in. And so this is the starting point for all of our reporting. Now, like I said, 99% of the time, I'm going straight to purchase order domain because then I can grab, I can select, highlight that, and then choose data or just double click it. So now what I'm going to be able to do is over on the left-hand side, you see this is the source field, and we're going to be pulling them over here to the right to these selected fields. Now, what I can do is, as a part of this business intelligence reporting tool, we can run a report on every single field that's in BidBuy. So it is a very powerful tool. And the more you get into this, the more you'd be able to realize what it can do. But from a high level view, if I just click this, the double arrows there, it brings all the selected fields over. Now, I want to caution you against that if maybe you don't have a good network connection, or because you're going to be pulling in a lot of information if you do that. Now, if you know exactly what you want, you can go and say I want the PO number, and so these are all the fields that are going to be pulling in a report that we will then export to Excel. Each one of these arrows, you can select an arrow to open it up. Purchase order account. So you can see all these different fields that you can pull over. So let's say for this one, I want to do fiscal year. I want the PO number. I want the org name, which is the agency, because most of the time you're not going to be running reports on all the agencies, right? That's going to bring a lot of information. It can bog things down. So you want to be able to put the org name in here so we can put a pre-filter on that, and we'll show you how to do that in just a second. Let's see, what else would we like to do? All these fields, there's just a lot of them. Let's see, we want the vendor. Say we want the vendor name. Let's see, what else would we want? Maybe the document status. Dollar amount. How about that? And then let's go. Oh, let's do one where we are looking at some of our custom columns. So the custom columns are fields that have been configured by the state. So the system only knows them as custom column 1, custom column 2, custom column 3, etc. But so if I click on header custom columns, you have these things that just say custom column or header column 3 value or 3 label. So we have a custom column data map for you that I'll show you. It's where we have our job aids. So on where our job aids are, there's a field that is business intelligence. There's the subject there. It's the custom column data map. And so this is really handy because this is guess I already had one pulled up. So this is um, you can go and take a look and see, okay, what are the fields that are these custom columns, right? So in this case, I want to be looking up, I'm going to be running how many small business purchases have we had? So that is the header column 7. Is this subject to small business set aside? So if that's yes, that the value is going to be 1. So if I go back to our reporting, the custom column, we talked about the difference between the value and the label. So for instance, if I just pull them both over, you'll be able to see it pretty quickly. So what that's going to be is the header column 7 label is going to actually have the question, is this a small business set aside? And then the value will either be 1 or 0. 1 is yes, 0 is no. Okay, so the other thing I can do now I have most of my fields that I want to have pulled over. Like I said, you can pull over all the fields and then kind of sort from there, but I want to be able to show you both ways to do it. So the pre-filters over here on the left-hand side, we want to make this just to be for one agency. We don't want to be pulling over all the agencies. So I can put a pre-filter on, and all that does is it makes it a little bit easier on the front end when you're running the report, okay? So I want to put let's see, where was on the org name. So I have a filter, and then you use the drop down to select, whatever agency you have. Okay, so now it's only going to be pulling all those fields off of agriculture. Now, another field that you would want to do that on, or put a pre-filter on, would be probably the fiscal year. If we're looking for just one fiscal year. Let's go back and look on FY20. So we put a pre-filter there. If you have a great connection and you don't have any issues, you can always do the sorting and filtering and all that sort of stuff after you run the report. But it is kind of handy to get it on the front end, because if going in, I know that I'm only going to be running for agriculture. Okay. All right. So now I select OK. And that brings us to our next field. Now at this point, it kind of feels like this is kind of duplicative because I have to pull over these again. Now the reason why we have to pull it over again into this AdHoc view is that, let's say I pulled all the fields over at the very beginning rather than just picking these 4 or 5 fields that I did. At this point, you can just drag them over. So kind of drag that one. And now you're going to see here where when I pull over the header column 7 label and value, it shows, which these are. Okay, so document status, let's see, fiscal year, we have the org name. So now you can see it's just agriculture there. And then we want the vendor name. And then down here at the bottom, where we have some of the dollar values fields, they just get separated there. So then I pull over the dollar amount. Okay, so at this point, you do have the option to, so over on the right-hand side, if I didn't put a pre-filter on in that first screen that I showed you, you can put it on here as well. Or if I wanted to change it, so I could select, for instance, in any of these documents, I can right-click, or any of the columns, sorry, I can right-click and create a filter there too. So there's 2 different ways to create the filter. You can do it from the previous screen, or once you get to this point, you can as well. This is just kind of giving you an overview of what it's going to look like. If you want to, at this point, you can move these around. You can kind of play with that at all. Over on the right-hand side, you can do, this is where your filters are. If you want to remove the filters, you can. We have a question, what does the measures do? The measures down here on the left-hand side, it really is, it's just the fiscal, the accounting piece of it. I'm not sure exactly why it separates it out. It's still just those fields that we wanted to get. So all it is just it separates the fields into two different things. So up here on the left-hand side, it says fields, which is your, all the fields that we pulled over. But the dollar amount is also just another field. But since it's tied to the accounting table, it puts it down there in the bottom left. But essentially, it operates in the same exact way. So once we get to this point, I go to, there's a couple different options here. You can, save the view, export it as these different options, as PDF. Most of the time, it does work on all these other ones, but really most of the time it's just going to go to Excel, right? That's probably what's going to be happening most. So when I export to XLSX, now this is the point where it's actually running the report. So if for instance, if I didn't have a good network connection, or if I didn't put all those pre-filters on to, have all 60 some agencies, that piece probably would take a little bit longer. But I now have my report, and I just pulled it up into Excel, and there you go. And at that point, you have all your information. You do the same exact thing, manipulate columns or fields the way that you normally would in Excel. But since I had all those pre-filters on there, and I knew I was looking for, okay, just one of the filters I could have put on, in this particular instance where I was doing a small business, the small business field, I could have put that pre-filter on at the header 7 value, because you can see how these are zeros. So within zeros, that means that is not, that answer was no for that custom column 7 field. So I could have changed that to have the filter to just be 1, which is yes. So when the report is run, I do have specifically just my small business fields. Now, I do need to highlight too. So this report, all it's doing is taking the information that was already put in to bid by. So that's where the quality control kind of comes in, when for our approvers out there that are checking those fields as a part of their approval process, in that the system of course doesn't really know. It's taking whatever you put in. So the old adage is kind of like garbage in, garbage out. So if you don't have the correct information in those fields, it could be pulling information that isn't actually correct. So you could put a filter here on that custom column 7 value to make that look for 1, and then you'd be able to have your small business report at that point. And so this can be run on any of those fields. There are just so many fields in there to be able to run. For instance, the BEP values, or if you have, you could have a list of all the percentages from that BEP question. So any of those questions that you fill, that you complete when you're completing your procurements, you can run a report off of. Okay. So once again, that custom column data map is where our job aids are, and that's going to come in handy. For instance, if your agency is utilizing the number of renewals, and that's something that could be run reports on. But once again, just because a field is correct in bid by, for instance, or is completed in bid by, I'm kind of thinking about this renewals. Just because bid by thinks that there's one more renewal remaining, remember to always go back to the original contract, because that is, of course, going to be, the contract is the contract. But so all these different fields you can run reports off of. SAP contract value, any of these fields. Okay, so that was kind of just touching on what the reporting piece is. This is being recorded, so go back and take a look at it. And another thing I will say too is, from a reporting standpoint, if you go in there and play and run reports and kind of practice within that system, you're not messing anything up. It's not like you're creating any procurements or any of that sort of thing. So you can practice in the training environment, certainly, but for the reporting functionality, you're not creating anything, you're not doing anything, so you're not going to mess anything up, I should say. Can you demo how to save a report to rerun again? Okay, yep, for sure. Okay, so that's a great point. Sorry, I think I might have missed that earlier. Okay, so at this point, this, you can save this view, save AdHoc View as, so that you can go in and save that. At that point, you can also save, let me go back all the way, just kind of start over from scratch real quick. I go to AdHoc Reporting. I'm going to go to the purchase order domain. For instance, if I go to the requisition domain, here's just a quick little aside. The reason why you have all those there, but I don't really use them, is that these fields are the only fields that I have, and they're just fields that are attached to a requisition. So you can still run reports that are specific to requisitions, because that's there. All those different domains are there as an option. I anticipate most of the reports being run from the PO domain. That's all. So I'll go to the purchase order domain. Let's go, I'm just going to pull all these over, and I can save as a topic here too. So for instance, if I only have my specific things that I'm looking for, if I save as a topic, I can then name it. I can go in and name, this is the small business report, for instance, and then I can click OK. So now I can continue on, but I have that now saved as a they call it a topic. Can each user share their created reports agency-wide? Yes, you can. Once it's saved, so it's not saved just for the creator, so that's a good question. It's not only just for you, it will be within, so now where that is saved at in that domain, anybody can access that same exact report. So if I had, my 7 or 8 specific fields that I wanted to have in there, and you call it the small business report or something like that, you can go in now, and that's an option there. Can you mix fields from different domains? Mix fields from different domains. So if you go into short answer is no, because I can't, once you run a report and you have it set up, it's there. But if you go to the PO, most of the fields are in that PO domain. There are some fields that aren't, but there's also, for instance, there's a quote domain, but a lot of those fields are underneath this vendor. So you can go in here, and a lot of those same, as a part of the quote domain, for instance, some of the fields, they do cross over. So a lot of those same fields that would be in a different domain are in this PO domain as well. Okay. So once again, at this point, you just pull over anything that you needed to do, that you want to run reports off of. In this case, I had dragged all of them over. So this is the option of where if you bring all the fields over, you still have to pick and choose at this point, document status and, PO number, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So the good news is, if you go in and mess around and play with it and take a look at this video, you're not going to do anything to mess anything up in the system. And if you have more questions, we can follow up and do a bit of more of a deeper dive. I don't have tons of experience with the reporting. but it is a pretty cool tool, and there's a lot of information in there, and you can run those reports. There's no limit. You could have a report that's set up and that's run, on the first of every month or at the very end of the month for those sorts of things, or quarterly, and that way you can have your reports set up that way as well. Okay, so not seeing any other questions. I think we're just about done. We do have fun facts. So this is for my Trekkie friends. Fun fact of the day: September 8th, 1966, Star Trek premieres, the very first episode on NBC. So go well and prosper, everyone. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.